17th April, 1945, Saxony wakes grudgingly. Mist clings to brick like damp gauze, and the commandeered Luftwaffe hospital smells of carbolic, cold stone, and last night's coal smoke. A GMC CCKW 2.5-ton idles in the courtyard, its 270 cubic inch straight six ticking a steady metronome while exhaust ghosts across the flagstones. PFC Doc Riley, 120th Evacuation Hospital Detachment, checks a canvas roll, plasma tubing, sulfur packets in waxed cartons, morphine syrettes sleeping in olive drab foil. Beside him, Second Lieutenant Ruth Ellis, Army Nurse Corps, dark hair pinned severe beneath a cap that has survived 3 railheads and 1 mud-choked detour, counts off instruments in a cracked enamel basin. "Again," she says. Riley smiles and starts over. They have practiced this so often the ritual feels like prayer. A Red Cross driver edges another ambulance under the archway. 2 fingers raised, 2 in labour. The guard detail peels out to clear a lane, boots slapping on wet cobbles. Inside, the stairwell walls sweat moisture and history. The floors are scrubbed to a dull squeak. On a litter near the boiler room, a German civilian, Ilse, watches the Americans with a caution that is not quite fear. Her lips are white with thirst. Riley slides a thermometer into place and asks, in serviceable German, when she last kept water down. Upstairs, screens divide a ward that once billeted pilots. Now they shelter the enemy's women, camp survivors, civilians, a Wehrmacht Helferin whose belly rides high and hard. Her name, Lotte, emerges only after Ellis places a warm wool blanket over her and asks quietly, "When did the pains begin?" Orders filter in from a 6th Armoured Patrol. Sector secure. Do not strip the hospital. Compel German staff to remain under US supervision. Doctrine over vengeance, even here. Riley takes the orders like oxygen. If the plumbing works and the autoclave hisses, he knows he can bend catastrophe towards survival. He ties a triage tag to Ilse's litter, urgent but stable, and signals the litter team. Ellis checks her Hamilton watch, listens where a fetoscope would normally hang, and nods once. "We can work with this," she says, meaning the ward, the staff, the thin edge of time. Outside, the deuce and a half eases to idle. The engine's soft coughs fall into rhythm with the click of Ellis's clamp, as if the machine itself were leaning in to help. In the courtyard, a US flag the size of a tablecloth lifts and settles on a breeze that tastes of rain. "Bring the warmed blankets," Ellis calls, already moving. Somewhere above the mist, a church bell tries a single uncertain note. The day answers with the rattle of tailgate chains. Lotte Wiegand has been trained to expect cruelty. Pamphlets at battalion headquarters promised the Anglo-Americans would spit in a prisoner's cup, that coloured troops would be loosed without restraint, that women captured in uniform would be paraded. The first American to touch her is a nurse who warms Lotte's hands between her own, measuring the distance between contractions by the sweep of a second hand on a battered Hamilton wristwatch. "Atman," Ellis says, "breathe." Then in English to Riley, "Get me a sterile field and boil the forceps whether or not we'll need them." The ward is a compromise between doctrine and ruin. Blackout bulbs hum like bees in jars. The portable field sterilizer rattles to a simmer. Carbolic has that sweet sharp edge that lives forever in memory. Riley loops a longer plasma tube so he can lift the bottle high if Ilse's pressure dips again. The Tallquist hemoglobin shades tell him she is anemically thin, but not catastrophic. He marks it with an aniline pencil that leaves bruised purple letters on damp paper. A German doctor, hands scrupulously washed, face a study in exhausted obedience, offers to translate. Ellis accepts, then refuses his attempt to supervise. "You will assist," she says, courteous and absolute. It confuses Lotte that the black American nurse treats her like a patient and not a trophy. Scarcity has taught her to hoard breath and apologies. The enemy spends blankets on a stranger. She remembers a signals truck that died for lack of a condenser, The sergeants shrug. There were no spares. Here the Americans unwrap gauze like pastry. A GI with a rifle stands at the door, jaw tight as an old grievance. Riley catches his eye and says the sentence he has been taught to say, "Severity, not allegiance." The private doesn't answer. He doesn't leave either. Ellis checks fundal height, asks about fluid, listens for fetal heart tones the old-fashioned way, ear to belly, then a nod to the midwife hovering at her shoulder. "We'll try to keep you here," she tells Lotta, "but if we must move, that truck can ride smoother than stairs." The CCKW outside answers with a confident idle, as if proving the point. Thunder grumbles far off, or artillery. No one flinches. War has taught them to continue the task at hand. Lotta exhales when Ellis sets a warm towel on her knees. "Danke," she whispers, and hears the nurse say from a long way off, "We do medicine." The Americans work like a well-drilled company, but the trick is deeper, a system strong enough to survive mistakes. Riley inventories the ward as if it were an ammunition dump, glass 4 bottles, collapsible litters, cord clamps by the dozen, ether by the pint. The quartermaster sergeant arrives with a grin and a requisition pad, swearing that he's issued more gauze today than this Wehrkreis saw all winter. He is only half joking. A Red Cross driver stacks crates of condensed milk, labels stamped Detroit, and a box of hot water bottles because someone remembered that warmth is a medicine too. Under US supervision, the German head nurse signs an order to keep the autoclave running day and night. A military government officer explains politely that the hospital will remain intact. German staff will be paid to treat their own people according to American standards. This is not mercy alone. It is policy. The conversion of enemy infrastructure into an American force multiplier. The portable X-ray apparatus is rolled into a corner because the mains flicker. If the power dies, they will do without. If it holds, they will find fractures the eye cannot see. Lotta labours, the contractions narrowing into a clean, cruel math. Ellis rotates her team in precise 15-minute blocks. She learned long ago that gentleness requires discipline. Riley opens another carton of dressings and thinks about the absurd scale that makes such small moments possible. At Willow Run, a single factory could finish a consolidated B-24 every 60-odd minutes at peak, one heavy bomber an hour, an impossible river of aluminum and rivets that rewrote the grammar of war. What can't you do, he thinks, if your country can do that? In this ward, the echo is lighter, but no less decisive. Enough tubing, enough clamps, enough fuel to keep the CCKW idling just in case a midnight dash becomes the difference between a mother and a memory. He briefs the German doctor on the plan. If hemorrhage, plasma first. If distress, move downstairs and load head first to keep nausea controlled. If power fails, lamps to the second shelf, wicks trimmed. The man nods like a student. Outside, rain begins with the shy patter that becomes resolve. The church bell somewhere up the street tries again and finds its tone. Ellis presses Lotta's shoulder through a contraction and says, "Good." Again, the nun quiet of the room breaks only for breath, the small music of clamps and the steady heart of an engine waiting in the courtyard to carry mercy forward by the ton. Morning redraws the ward in cleaner light. The mist has lifted to a dissolving grey, and with it the sense that anything might fail without warning. The quartermaster returns with a new manifest, giving sets, number. 11 blades, an extra Davis gas air apparatus on loan from the surgical tent. A second CCKW noses in with blankets and a crate of K rations for staff and patients. The driver jokes that spam is the currency of empire. Riley accepts the crate like sacrament and hands 2 tins to the German midwife, who pockets them with a look that is almost relief. Ellis trains a German nurse at the basin. Glove technique, count your instruments aloud, never let the sterile field drift below the level of your hands. She speaks the grammar of procedure without condescension. The Germans are competent. They have had to be. Scarcity has turned them into improvisers who reuse what Americans would discard. Today, abundance is a weapon. Gauze can be single-use. Tubing can be replaced, not boiled into brittleness. A kerosene heater mutters in the corner, making a small circle of reliable warmth where infants can sleep without turning blue at the edges. Ilse sips broth from a GI canteen cup and tries not to cry at the taste of salt and fat. Her pulse feels less like a trapped bird. Riley watches colour return to lips that were paper a night ago and marks the chart with his purple pencil. He checks the fetoscope, no battery to betray them, and hears what he wants to hear. He nods to Ellis, who answers with an almost invisible smile that looks like someone lowering a rifle after a long aim. The ward breathes. This is how a nation's might becomes a mother's chance. Class 8 supplies that arrive when promised, a spare truck if one fails, fuel jerry cans stacked like squat guardians beside the archway. Abundance creates time, and time, purchased by Detroit and ration boards and swing shifts, creates gentleness that would be impossible under the lash of shortage. A private from the guard detail wanders in with a chocolate bar he cannot eat without feeling wrong and leaves it by Lotta's cot without comment. She stares at it like a medal left on the wrong chest. Ellis checks her watch. The contractions are touring toward inevitability. "You're doing well," she tells Lotta, and it is both a fact and a promise. Outside, the CCKW coughs once, clears its throat, and settles into the old patient idle of a machine that knows it will be asked for more and is unafraid to give it. Lotta measures the room in enemy smells: oil, soap, boiled cloth. She has slept in barns and Bakelite and canvas radio trucks, in dugouts where the damp never leaves your bones. Nothing in those places sounded like this, a choreography of competence in which even the clink of a clamp has intention. She remembers December on a frozen road, a signals van opened like a toy to steal one working condenser from another dead set, the NCO muttering that Berlin will send a miracle and then sending none. That night she learned not to expect rescue. This morning the enemy brings milk warmed to body temperature and a wool blanket that smells faintly of sun from some American laundry far away. She watches the black American nurse with a fascination she would once have named contempt because that word was safer to say aloud. The woman's hands move without hesitation. When Lotta apologizes for sweating the sheets, Ellis says, "Good. It means you're working," and replaces them without scolding. Riley cracks 2 ampules against a sterile pad and lets Ilse sip the salt back into her. The guard in the doorway keeps his rifle at high port, but looks, against his will, like a man who wants this to end well. The American radio hums with the round-bellied confidence of a set that is not scavenged from 3 others. SCR 300, someone has called it, backpack weight that would make a girl like Lotta grunt with effort. Here it is simply present, voice clear, ordering another convoy to bring diapers and lamp wicks and the ordinary miracles that have abandoned her side of the lines. Lotta thinks of wooden-soled boots and brittle webbing, of the way ration bread turns grey when you stare at it, and something caves in. She is 22 and has learned to be an auxiliary and a soldier and an accessory to a story that has run out of pages. She squeezes Ellis's wrist when the contraction crests. "Please," she says, in a voice she recognizes too late as her mother's. "You and the child are my patients," Ellis replies, as if reciting a regulation, and perhaps she is. Severity, not allegiance, skills before politics. The sentence puzzles Lotta because it should be untrue and is not. When the pain loosens, she catches her breath, and through the open window comes the patient breathing of the truck outside, ready, unhurried, as certain as a heart. The private from the guard detail corners Riley near the stairwell and speaks in a voice with gravel in it. "Doc, my buddy bled out on the Moselle." "You're telling me we treat them first?" Riley doesn't flinch. "We treat the worst first," he says. "That's the rule." It keeps us human when it's hardest. He doesn't add the rest, that this is what separates an army from a mob, because the private already knows. The man nods once and posts himself at the door, a sentinel not against the patients but against the day's unpredictabilities. Ellis counts instruments, the rhyme of it steadying her pulse. Scissors, clamp, clamp, forceps, needle holder. She coaches Lotta through transition, short breaths, chin tucked, eyes on the nurse, not the clock. The kerosene heater hums, a small sun in a corner Pacifics will never see. The German doctor stands opposite Ellis, gloved and focused. He would likely have done the work well enough alone. Under orders, under watch, under a different flag, he is better. Systems do that to people. They make their goodness usable. Outside, a Red Cross driver logs arrivals against a chalkboard whose earlier lectures were about the enemy's duty to die well. Now it lists plasma ETAs and diaper shortages. Impossible statistics lurk behind that casual chalk. By most counts, America has fielded roughly 2.4 million trucks in this war, more than all Axis nations combined, and over 40 billion rounds of small arms ammunition have rolled from factories that never sleep. Numbers like weather, inevitable. Numbers that let a nurse in a ruined ward keep a promise to a frightened girl. Doctrine rides on them the way a ship rides on water. A rumble of distant guns creeps down the corridor like a rumour that refuses to die. No one pauses. Ellis checks for crowning, asks for towels warmed but not hot, warns the German doctor she'll cut only if tear risk demands it. Understood, he says, and means it. Ilse, stronger now, translates confidence with a smile Lotta cannot yet return. The private steps sideways to let a nun carry in boiled water. He is courteous as a church door being held on a windy day. Next one, we bear down, Ellis says, and the room tightens around that phrase. Riley slings the plasma bottle higher on a nail to keep flow true. The engine outside never varies. In a building captured yesterday by men who carried rifles up stairwells slick with rain, in a ward where the enemy waits to meet her child in peace, the old rule holds: severity, not allegiance. They have chosen who they are before choosing who wins. Blackout curtains glow faintly with the first grey of a Saxon morning, while inside the ward the air holds its own weather of ether and sweat. Lotta clenches the rails of the litter as another contraction rips through, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. Ellis leans close, voice low and certain, the calm of a professional who has counted the seconds of 1,000 labours. Steady now. Push when it peaks, Riley adjusts the plasma bottle, lifting it higher on the nail so gravity does the work the pump cannot. The American midwife's gloved fingers trace the baby's descent, every move precise as a drill. Outside, the CCKW engine murmurs with unshaken patience. Its straight six has hauled artillery shells and field kitchens. Tonight it waits to haul life itself if the mother bleeds. Rain brushes the blackout shades like the hiss of escaping steam. A brief shudder of uterine atony. Ellis feels the slack in the muscle, barks for massage and keeps her palm firm until the uterus tightens again. A second plasma bottle is cracked and hung before Lotta even senses the danger has passed. Then the cry comes, thin, indignant, unmistakably alive. Ellis draws the slick infant onto Lotta's chest beneath a GI wool blanket that smells faintly of sun-baked canvas and machine oil. The German doctor, eyes shining, whispers a prayer from memory while Riley records vitals in purple aniline pencil. For an instant, the war recedes. There is only the newborn's fierce wail and the steady tick of the truck's idling engine, two heartbeats of a world refusing to end. Later, over black coffee in chipped enamel mugs, Riley sketches the math that has made this quiet victory inevitable. America has fielded roughly 2.4 million trucks in this war, more vehicles than all the Axis nations combined. And of these, some 812,000 are the same 2.5-ton class as the CCKW purring outside. GMC alone has delivered more than 500,000. A single factory at Willow Run has produced a B-24 heavy bomber every 60-odd minutes, an impossible rhythm of rivets and aluminum that turns logistics into prophecy. The quartermaster sergeant flips his requisition book open and thumps a crate marked Detroit. "Spare parts for the spare parts," he says with a grin. Fuel, tyres, brake linings, bulbs, all already scheduled for replacement before wear begins. What the Reich calls a miracle, the Americans call a Tuesday. Lotte, drifting in the half-sleep of exhausted triumph, hears only fragments. Class 8 supplies, turnaround times, next convoy in 6 hours. Yet each phrase tells her something she never imagined. The enemy plans mercy as thoroughly as it plans war. Ellis folds her report with neat military corners. She has delivered a child into a captured town because a nation 3,000 miles away has learned how to mass-produce not just bombers and rifles, but blankets and plasma. Riley drains the last of his coffee and taps the mug once, a quiet salute to the numbers that made humanity possible tonight. The truck outside coughs and steadies, a heartbeat of industrial democracy. By midday, the hospital is no longer merely occupied, it is converted. A military government officer posts new orders. The Luftwaffe facility will remain open under American supervision, its German staff retained and paid to treat civilians and prisoners alike. Ellis takes the German head nurse through an American chart, pulse, respirations, fundal checks, until the woman can repeat the cadence without translation. Riley sets up a supply point in what yesterday was a propaganda office, chalking plasma arrival times where lectures on racial destiny once hung. Ilse, colour restored and pulse strong, helps translate for frightened newcomers. Her voice steadies others, even as she marvels at her own survival. The guard who once scowled now carries boiled water for the next batch of dressings. Enemy infrastructure becomes a force multiplier, each corridor turned from fortress to clinic. Chalk dust floats in the high light of broken windows. The quartermaster boards out convoy schedules beside a list of diaper shortages. Where once the regime plotted indoctrination, Americans now chart oxygen tanks and baby formula. The transformation is almost casual, as if inevitable once the trucks arrived. Lotte watches from her cot, her newborn sleeping against her chest, and senses that the world has tilted. The nation she feared has made her child's first breath a matter of organised routine. Reports move up the chain with the same quiet efficiency as supplies. The military government captain notes in crisp prose that humane treatment of pregnant internees and POWs has reduced unrest and secured local cooperation. Ellis drafts her own after-action report, recording vitals and procedures without flourish. She does not mention the private who left a chocolate bar by Lotte's cot, or the German doctor who asked to remain under American oversight. Such gestures need no amplification. Lotte names her daughter Anna, a choice whispered in the hush between infant sighs. The guard, still grieving a comrade lost on the Moselle, finds himself checking on mother and child before his shift ends. Mercy, Ellis knows, is contagious. She files her report knowing that back home her own country will return her to segregated wards, yet here she has become the embodiment of a democratic ideal. Care offered without allegiance. Daily patient census, bed turnover rates, fuel allotments, all logged and guaranteed. Stability is treated as a supply problem, solvable with the same discipline that feeds armies. The captain signs a requisition for diapers with the same pen he uses for ammunition requests. Outside, a convoy rattles toward the next town, proof that mercy can travel at the same speed as war. Zooming out, the arithmetic of final victory is staggering. By spring 1945, American industry has produced more .30-06 cartridges than the Axis nations could have in a decade, over 40 billion rounds. The 12th Army Group moves tens of thousands of tons of fuel and rations each day, a supply flood that dwarfs the Reich's remaining capacity. And in the quiet wards of Penig, the same machine that forges Garand rifles and Sherman tanks delivers midwives, milk and plasma without pause. Riley briefs incoming medics using the night's events as living doctrine. Triage by severity, not allegiance. Seize enemy infrastructure and turn it to care. Let abundance enforce humanity. Ellis receives a commendation she tucks into her kit, knowing history may never call her name. Ilsa volunteers to help record births and hometowns for repatriation. Her neat German script a bridge between conqueror and conquered. These numbers, almost too large to believe, are not a boast but a ledger of democratic will. The same factories that can outproduce an empire have, without drama, guaranteed that a German infant lives. Riley runs his finger down a column of figures and sees in them not just victory, but the quiet triumph of principle over fear. Weeks later, the front has moved east and Penig settles into the uncertain calm of occupation. Lotta rocks Anna in a ward that now smells of soap and warm milk instead of ether and fear. She remembers the pamphlets that warned of American brutality and feels them crumble like old paper. Ellis folds her notes and requests reassignment to a surgical ward, her eyes lingering a moment on the infant she helped bring into the world. German staff sign contracts to remain under US supervision, vaccination drives and water purification units begin to reach the surrounding villages. The supply drawdown is scheduled, but maternity wards will keep their fuel and their blankets until German authorities can carry the work forward. Riley climbs into the waiting CCKW, its engine turning over with the same unhurried confidence as on the night of the birth. The baby's cry follows the truck through the courtyard archway, rising above the tick of the straight six. It is a sound that carries farther than guns, a proof that American power can deliver more than destruction. For those who witnessed it, the lesson endures. Abundance and discipline, mercy and might. This is how a free people win, and how a child is born into a better world.